I'm Scott Fishman.
I'm John Dwoskin.
And this is the 7-Minute Salesman.
Welcome, everybody.
Hey, John, how you doing?
Fish, good morning. How you doing?
Doing great today, man. Ready for an amazing podcast.
Yeah, me too. It's a sunny morning and excited to kind of share some information with our listeners. Thanks so much for tuning in.
Yeah, and I do want to touch on something real quick before we begin, John. We talk about the 7-minute community a lot, and the feedback's been great. I love hearing it, both good and bad. Thankfully, most of it's good, folks. But we want to name the 7-minute community. We keep calling it the 7-minute community, but there's got to be something better. So if anyone has any ideas, give us your thoughts.
Right, the seveners, the minuters, something. Right, yeah, please. We appreciate you guys. We appreciate it. Also, keep some ideas coming our way.
So, John, what are we going to talk about today?
Today we're going to talk about something that seems to have just been pretty popular as far as things that I've been talking to people about and people have been talking to us about. And that is quieting the inner critic. I work with people who are always looking to get to the next level, and getting to the next level for anybody is never easy. And I think at every new level that anybody goes to, whether you're in sales or whatever you're doing in business, there's always kind of a new inner critic that kind of shows their face. And we as business people need to look that head on and just plow right through it. Much easier said than done, because I think, and Fish, you talked about this on a podcast that I interviewed you on for my podcast, Think Business, the Impostor Syndrome, which I know you're going to talk about in a little bit. But I think it's really important today to understand that I don't think the inner critic ever goes away, and it's always with us at different levels as we grow our business. So today we're going to give you some tips and some tools on how to quiet that inner critic and really tap into more of the inner genius.
I like that. And something you mentioned just now that I didn't even think about is that you're constantly fighting with that inner critic at every level. Like once you get from A to B, you're going to have another critic that's going to hit you. So you need to learn how to fight this. You need to learn how to make that great sales job, which I think the biggest sale we make is selling ourselves, that we're actually good enough to do this sometimes.
Absolutely.
So we do have to continue to fight with that inner critic so we can turn it into, you call it an inner genius, and I think it's like Rob Schneider in every Adam Sandler movie where he's like, you can do it. That's the guy I want on my shoulder, telling me what I'm going to be doing.
Right. Or like Tyson had, paid some guy to just walk next to him or behind him, I can't remember, and just say, you're the best, you're the best, you're the best.
Did he really?
Yeah.
That's amazing.
So, I think it's really important because I know some business people who work with people all around the world who have amazing positions in companies. And one of the things that we were recently talking about is they were telling me that a common thread of everybody that they work with is, and this person is a nutritionist, is that they all think that one day someone's going to kind of realize that they don't know what they're doing, or they have this inner critic, or they have this imposter syndrome, Fish, like you're going to talk about in a little bit, that you talked about on my podcast, which got phenomenal feedback. And so I think one of the first steps is to realize that we have this inner critic and it's not going away, but we need to be able to quiet the inner critic. And I think one of the first ways to quiet that inner critic is to, and we've talked about this on past podcasts, actually have a plan that has a lot of detail in it. So you know exactly what you're doing and where you're going, and you always get your eye on the end game and the prize. Because that, I think, a lot of times will override many, many things. I think a lot of times when people don't have a plan, the critic can take you down.
Yeah. And something we've touched on a couple times, so I want to define imposter syndrome real quick and then touch on that. It's that imposter syndrome is also known as the imposter phenomenon, fraud syndrome, or the imposter experience. It's a psychological pattern in which people doubt their accomplishments and have a persistent, often internalized fear of being exposed as a fraud. And I'm of the belief that everybody has this. It's
Everybody.
not something like we think internally, we think it's just us. And we think, gosh, we're not good enough. They're going to figure out that I don't know what the hell I'm doing. But everybody suffers from this. It's just a matter of how you deal with it. You and I have dealt with it. We started a podcast. We're like, do people really want to listen to us? Hey, guess what? People do. We've both
Right.
written books. It's like, do people want to hear what we have to say? Yeah, they do. You've actually now you're speaking at different companies now, John. And it's like, do these people really want to hear what the hell I've got to say? And
Right.
it's like, yeah, they do. And now I'm being interviewed all over the place. You're being interviewed in different podcasts and in different arenas. And the common thread is we're like, gosh, we actually have something to say that people want to hear. And still, every time I sit down, I strap that mic on, I'm like, it's just me. Like I'm not some superstar, but I think everybody suffers from that.
Yeah, I agree, Fish. And I'm just going to point out something that you just said, because I think what you just said is very basic yet very difficult sometimes to do, which is when you have, like, for example, in this example, like I'll say to Fish, like, hey, I can't believe X, Y, and Z. I'm feeling insecure about X, Y, and Z. And then Fish will say, dude, like, snap out of it. Blah, 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 blah. Like you just did, in a way. And I think you got to be able to, like, just kind of share that with somebody so somebody can remind you. It's easy to say to remind yourself, but it's nice. You got to be a little bit vulnerable and open up to other people so they can say, hey, listen, let me kind of refresh your memory of, what you do and what you can share and how you can serve others and help them grow. So I think that's really, really, really important.
Yeah. Hey, if anyone wants to run with this idea, I'm going to give you I don't want to say $1 million idea. I'm going to give you $100 idea right here. Uh, Little window stickers that you could put on your mirror that say you can do it, or you got this, or you're amazing. So every time you look in the mirror, rear of your car, you got this. Just a reminder that, you are good. You can handle this and you're better than you believe you are.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I just want to say one thing too, because I agree. Everybody in the world suffers from this at some level and at some stage. And every time I'm working with clients, and I'm sure you feel the same way, Fish, they always think that their problem is they're the only one that has that issue. And so just kind of getting it out there and realizing you're not, and then building the tools around it. Again, I think I'm a big fan of just kind of having a plan that overrides, because anything that forces you to take action on a consistent basis will help you push through.
Yeah, because if you're constantly knowing what your next step is going to be, and that's what you're focused on, like, okay, I did this, now I have to do this. I finished that task, now I have to cross this one off. If you're moving and you have that plan and you're confident in your plan, you're not going to be able to focus. You're not going to have time to focus on that inner critic. You're not going to have time to worry about what you're doing. A wise man told me once, because I hated public speaking, and quite frankly, I still do. I have a microphone in front of my freaking face, and I hate public speaking. But he said, you have to treat everything, every time you're standing up in front of a crowd, they need to hear your message. It's not that you just want to give them a message and you're wasting time and giving verbal masturbation up there in front of people. They need your message. If you ran into a theater and said, this place is on fire, because it was on fire. I'm not saying you should do that, folks, by the way, because it's illegal. But if you ran into a theater and said this place is on fire, you wouldn't be nervous to tell people that the theater's on fire. You'd be doing them a service. The same thing when you have a message that needs to get out, they need to hear your message. They want to hear your message. It's not just being said to say it. You're not wasting their time.
And just because something seems so fundamental to you doesn't mean it's fundamental to other people. And if you have a way to articulate that, that is key. I think sometimes people don't realize that, because some things that they're working with other people on, or teaching other people, or whatever the message is, if it comes so easily to them, they don't realize that it's a gift that they have that they need to share with others. And so I think that's really important.
Right.
But I want to talk about the inner story that we tell ourselves, and then the assumption of the story that we tell ourselves of the person that we're selling to or doing business with. I'll share a quick story, and I know we've talked about the Axeman in the past, which we've gotten
Yeah.
some great feedback on. But I have a client who's in sales who had a meeting with a couple The meeting went really, really well, and everything was very positive. But then, the 4, 5, 6 follow-up emails and phone calls just went radio. They went radio silent. Nothing, nothing, and no response. So this person was thinking, maybe it didn't go as well as I thought, and they didn't know what to do. Should I follow up? What should I do? Should I let it die? Et cetera, et cetera. And so one of the things we talked about is you don't know what's going on in somebody else's life that's going to put things on hold. And until they give you hey, stop calling or emailing or connecting with me, then you have the right to continue to follow up, bring some value, and maybe give them a little bit of an out in an email or a message to see, because other than if not, keep on going. Yada, yada, yada. He ended up sending them another email with value and a little bit of out clause, to which the response was, hey, sorry, we've been out of touch. My wife's mother's been ill. And so all that energy and all that, and all the assumptions that were made were just wasted energy.
Right.
And it was nothing. And so that inner dialogue, I think when you're newer in sales is a lot harder to overcome. But the deeper you're into sales, then you realize that it's just part of the continuum, that sometimes that happens, and you just got to keep on forging ahead unless somebody tells you otherwise.
Right. And you need to recognize when it's time to send that email or leave that message, to let me know where you stand message. Because I've always preached no maybes. I want a yes. I want a no. I don't want people that I'm just calling to call you, because every once in a while I have a client that I think they're just comfortable with me calling and checking in with them. And it becomes part of their routine. And then when I take that away, they either sometimes call me back and say, hey, I want to do business. You haven't called me today. And I'm like, yeah, because you haven't done shit for the last 15 times I've called you. Let's do something, and then
Yeah,
they actually do or they don't. And even I've been doing sales for decades now. And I now recognize when that comes, when I have that moment where I need to send that parachute email that's like, hey, John, you and I have been talking for a while. I haven't heard from you. Please tell me if you want to move forward. What questions haven't I answered for you? Or are you just not interested in moving forward? Because I'm fine with that. I don't want to bother you either. Please let me know either way. And then, yes, you do get those responses that are like, jump in a lake. I don't want you calling me anymore. Or you also get the same, sometimes people come back and say, all right, I've had something going on. I've had that sick mother-in-law. I broke my leg. I've been, there's myriad excuses or reasons why they haven't gotten back to you.
yeah.
And a lot of times you get the sale right then and there because you've just actually addressed it. You called out the elephant in the room.
Right. And with and like we talked about last week, with some empathy, you throw empathy in there, and boom, yeah. Let's talk about Fish. What can kind of knock us off of our game. I don't know any other way to describe this, but just kind of the asshole that throws us off our game and hits every insecurity of our inner critic and really freezes us. How do we get over that?
Well, I think it's important to take a step back in that respect, because they're coming at you because that's their game. That's the way they do business. That's the way they've won in the past, by just being completely offensive. And they're coming at you. And when I say offensive, also offensive sometimes as well, right? But they're coming at you. Kind of think about the Karate Kid. They're coming at you like Johnny. He wants to hurt you. He wants to get in your face, and he wants to be all crazy and give some guttural growl after he knocks you down.
Yeah,
you could be gosh, what's Ralph Macchio's name? I don't even remember, but I forget it.
I can't remember. I
it's
feel like
Ralph.
I should remember. Yeah.
It's Ralph for now. So he actually steps back in the end, and he kind of relaxes on his heel and is able to win on one leg because he just calmed down, and he didn't play into this guy's game. And that's the thing, is don't let them engage you. That's the way they've won in the past. And they're a bully. They're hiding something with the way they're coming at you. So you need to actually use their momentum and their leverage against them, by just calming down and relaxing and taking it all in and being logical and realizing, hey, I am good at what I do. You might be good at what you do with the way you attack, but I'm good at actually using my brain and solving this problem. Let me do this.
Yeah. Yeah. That's great, Fish. I love the way that you ran that down, because I think it's so important. That is sometimes the way that other people do business. And if it's not in alignment with who you are or how you do business, you got to be able to recognize that. That was great.
Well, thank you. And you pivot to your way of doing business, not theirs. You don't fall into it. That's the whole thing, is you can't fall into their traps. It's the same thing with your inner critic. Your inner critic is that person on your shoulder that's saying, you can't do it. You can't do it. You suck. This isn't you. You're going to fail. All those bad things, all those negative things that they're telling you, you need to somehow combat that. And sometimes it's just taking that deep breath, calming down, reminding yourself that you have won before and you're going to win again. You're not a loser.
Right. You are absolutely not. I just saw the movie RBG, Ruth Bader Ginsburg, who's a Supreme Court justice. And one of the things she talked about is that when people, I'm paraphrasing a bit, but attacking her or coming at her, or, she's very liberal and things of that nature, is she never raises her voice. She never loses her cool. And because then she would give them exactly what they wanted, and the energy and she would lose her composure, and then she would never, nobody wins in that scenario. Right. And I loved what she had to say there. And sometimes that can be very difficult to do, but, reminding yourself to collect yourself, that you don't have to raise your voice to be heard and match somebody else's game. I love how you said it, pivot to how you play the game.
John, I like it.
Yeah. I think one of the things also, and one of my favorite quotes is by Theodore Roosevelt, and a piece of it, it's a long quote, but it talks about the credit belongs to the man who is actually in the arena, whose face is marred by dust and sweat and blood, who strives valiantly, who errs, who comes short again and again, because there is no effort without error and shortcomings, but who does actually strive to do the deeds, who knows great enthusiasms, the great devotions, who spends himself in a worthy cause, who at the best knows in the end the triumph of high achievement, and who at the worst, if he fails, at least fails while daring greatly. And that's part of a quote. But to be successful, I think you're always in the arena. I think you are always going to feel some level of insecurity. And that is what hopefully will drive you, as long as you know how to categorize it. Realize that person never goes away, but realize that you are stronger than the critic, and you got more genius than you do critic in you.
I like that. Have more genius than critic. That's excellent, John.
Yeah. Well, thanks. I believe it. So to all the listeners out there, take one step at a time and just tell your inner critic, thank you very much, but it's time for you to go away. And if it won't go away, say, shut the fuck up and go away, and just take action. And there's nothing you can't do.
John, well said. I think on that, it's great time to wrap this up. Remember, silence that inner critic. You're going to suffer from imposter syndrome. Just learn how to quell it, and just know that you are good at what you do and you are great. Go forward, take action, be the best you. Have fun, enjoy. Thank you for listening.
Take care, everybody. Thanks, everybody, for listening. Now, no excuses. It's time to put everything you listen to into action. Stop bullshitting yourself. Stop lying to yourself. Stop listening and doing nothing with this information. Take this information, implement it into your day, kick some ass, grow your business, grow your sales, make more money, have more fun, have a better life, period, the end.
What he said.